Welcome, everyone. Today I'm joined by three of our practitioners from Odyssey the Platform. We've got Dr. Jessica Norton, who is a naturopathic doctor. We've got Helen Ford, who is an intuitive guide and coach. And we've also got Anne Bayford, soul auditor, psychic, channel and trance medium. And we're looking at the topic today of stress. And I want to go straight to you, Jess. I want to know more about this word stress because it's thrown around all over the place. And essentially, we're all going to be experiencing some kind of stress in our everyday life. We're human. We live this kind of mundane human life every day. And there's going to be some element of stress. So as a doctor, when you get your patients that come to you, how do you determine if it's something beyond the normal everyday stress? So how would you define stress? What are you looking for?
So I guess technically, if I'll give you the medical definition of stress, we talk about it in a way that it can be a state of either real or perceived threat. So it can be something that's actually happening, or it could just be kind of happening in your mind. And that threat is a challenge to your homeostasis or to your well-being. And let's see. Usually I kind of break it down into it could be chemical stress. So you could be having exposure to some sort of toxins. So maybe you're a smoker or you live in a polluted area. It could be physical stress. You could break a bone, you could have back pain, that sort of thing. Or it could be emotional stress, dealing with your family, dealing with your finances, all the things that are coming at us in the world. And usually we're able to deal with them, right? We're able to meet the challenges, our body and our mind mounts a response, and then we come back to that balance of homeostasis. Now, how do we know when it gets to be too much? It's when you can really no longer mount a proper or appropriate response. And that could look like your body breaking down. It could look like you having an emotional breakdown. It could look like you having a mental breakdown, and you're just not able to mount the same response. So kind of depends on each person and how that's going to, I guess, assert itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those listening on this call and they're trying to work out, wait, am I in that category of it gone over that boundary and I would either need to seek help or so where is that kind of boundary? What are not just the boundary, but what kind of can people use to look at themselves and know if they are having this physical or emotional or chemical reaction to stress? What are these symptoms that people need to be looking out for?
It could be the just kind of everyday things. It could be maybe you're not sleeping well, whereas you used to get, 6, 7 hours of sleep uninterrupted a night, and now you're waking up throughout the night. You could be having panic attacks or new onset anxiety. Like maybe you're usually pretty chill, and all of a sudden you're irritable or you're flying off the handle. So maybe your emotional response is not quite regulated. You could have new onset of, actual physical conditions, things like high blood pressure. Could be maybe you have an autoimmune condition now that's flaring up and kind of out of control. So just comparing what your normal usually is and seeing when things are kind of out of balance there, or maybe you're not responding to things the way you used to. So it can be very subtle and just, it doesn't have to result in you going to the ER for a panic attack. It could be as bad as not sleeping well for multiple nights.
Mm, absolutely. And I want to kind of distinguish here between everyday stress, but
Mm.
what we deal with at Odyssey is navigating life, soul journeys, and we can deal with the everyday stresses, but I tend to find the people that come to Odyssey are the ones that are going through some of the biggest life changes. And that's why I want to come to you, Anne, as this soul auditor and people coming to you. How do we know if we're dealing with the stresses of everyday life or if it's a sign or symptom that we're going through maybe an awakening or where's that line?
Good question. Um, because as we know, life, everyday things, we're going to have stress. It's stress like running to catch a bus or going to work or about paying bills or if you've got children or if you're in a relationship. So we're going to have those everyday stress, and that makes sense. But a lot of everyday what we're going through, those stress, that stress level may only last a couple of minutes. Running for the bus, it was stressful. But if it's something that's ongoing and you've had these major life changes in your life, you've had a relationship broken down, or someone's passed over, or like with me, when I had my massive accident about 22 years ago, it was real life threatening. I died the first time round, and there was major challenges and stuff. And when I worked out the physical side of things and the emotional side of things, there was still something that wasn't quite right. And that's why I would sort of say, when I have clients that come to me where they look at their life, it could be this massive awakening for them. There's been a massive shift in their life, and it's sort of on an energetic soul level that there's something now that is time to make a change. So it's when you have that everyday stress, like, as I said, running for the bus, missing it, or going to work, or something with the children, or whatever, there's that. And then there's the other side of things where it's life is not making sense anymore. And it doesn't matter if you looked at it from a physical point of view or emotional point of view, it's just not making sense. It's something that changes your life. It sort of wakes you up that this is time to make changes. It's because you only have one life.
And I think it's important to note that the everyday stresses are going to be building up, and it is part of being human. It's part of the human experience. But then we've also got these bigger things that are going on. And I think it's really important to also make sure that we're looking at those and not ignoring the fact there might be a lesson or a message coming through those points.
Yeah.
And those stressful moments in our life are often navigating us towards somewhere else. But regardless of if they are these soul lessons or regardless of the everyday stress parts, Jess, coming back to you on this point, what's the kind of physiological impact of stress on the body? What's that process? Does it matter from your perspective if it's a soul lesson or big awakening? I mean, what is it always the same on a body level? What's happening within us?
Ooh, that's a big question.
It is. I asked the big question.
It's a big question. I think, let's see, piecing out, like for me on the clinical side of things, kind of where it's coming from matters, because it's going to matter in how we decide to treat it, right? If it's coming from a lifestyle, like a big life change or a big life shift, if we're not working with your mindset and how you deal with that, it doesn't matter. I can give you all the pills or all the treatments in the world. If you're not addressing that underlying cause, you're not going to change, and you're still going to feel stressed until you kind of move through that. But physiologically, what's happening? Let's see how to break it down. It kind of, in a way, it comes back to yeah. So I don't know how technical you want me to get, but it comes back to our nervous system in a way. When we perceive a threat or when there is stress, our nervous system kicks in to hyperdrives in a way. We have what we call our parasympathetic nervous system, which is our rest and digest, our relax, it's safe, to eat and rest and sleep. And we have our sympathetic nervous system, which is run, fight, hide, freeze. When we're at kind of having that sort of chronic stress or that shift that's happening in our life, our sympathetic nervous system usually gets activated. That's where we're trying to figure out a solution. That's when our blood vessels get dilated so that we can pump more blood so we can literally run away. And long term, that's fine for when we need to be able to deal with the situation, right? But it's problematic when it's long term, because it does start to then cause problems with our hormone regulation, which can show up, women missing periods, or, pushing out a lot of cortisol, which makes us even more stressed out. It then can even start to tap into things like brain fog, because when our cortisol is super high, we literally can't think. Like, it shuts down certain areas in the brain that are generally used for, like, logic and things like that. It's really more gotta run, gotta fight, gotta hide, or either just kind of freeze. So long term, those things have these types of physiological effects, but kind of where it's coming from determines how we're going to treat it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Helen, you're all about this kind of mindset, and you have so many tools that people can use to help them on a day-to-day basis. But a lot of people that are dealing with stress will just try to get on with it, right? It's like, I can just do it. I'm going to keep my head down. Or I've got my own support system of my friends, and they might not seek other professional help or build up their toolbox of things. And we see that in the way that people end up dealing with stress. And the stress level threshold is different than other people. Now, when people ignore stress, does that ever go away? Are we able to just ignore it, or does it stay within us?
Have you ever been able to ignore it?
For a short period of time. It might come back 5 years in the future.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, I mean, we live in a crazy, busy world, right? That our actual mind and body isn't necessarily always been equipped to deal with and to live at the pace that we live at, right? With our gadgets permanently and always switched on and all the things. So, yeah, I think a lot of people just go, oh, well, that's just part of life. I'll just keep pushing on through. But as Jess is just so beautifully explaining, there's not a longevity to that without it manifesting perhaps in another way, or without us just literally being taken out. We can only ignore what's coming through in our body for so long, because ultimately if we're feeling stress, it is literally a feeling thing. We might not understand it, but we can literally feel it, whether it's a racing heart, whatever the symptoms are. So yeah, I think you can attempt to ignore it. I don't think it will last. I think at some point it's going to bite you.
Yeah, it makes me think also that when we have these bodily cues and we speak about intuition and we speak about gut instinct, and I've very openly said that I'm not all about the gut instinct from a human design background, and I don't have that authority. However, I do have the same belief here that we have bodily cues and we need to listen to those bodily cues, and how those bodily cues can even be signs of the awakenings, right, Anne?
Yes, but it's interesting you're bringing that up, because we're all psychic to some degree. I mean, we're very similar, like to animals. Nobody's turned around and said to a dog, well, you can't sense that. You know, you can't sense there's a tsunami coming, but they're working with their natural abilities. You know,
could you imagine if they tried?
Yeah,
Right.
you know. So it's like, but we've been taught, you know, as children, we've gone into the daydream mode, we've been on the creative mode, and as young children, you know, we've been working with our natural abilities. You know, I have people that sort of said, you know, their child is seeing an invisible friend, and well, actually, there is an angel, or there is a spirit, or there is a soul that's guiding that child right now. But you keep saying it's not, and they're going crazy, whatever. You know, that's not helping the individual, and in the end, that child stops believing. Now, there was something that Helen had said, that it's also your mindset. And this is where, if I have a client and I'll say to Helen, can you see this client? Because of their beliefs is stopping them from actually tapping into the natural abilities that they have, their intuitive side. They're trying to sort of like poo-hoo it and go, no, I'm not going to listen to my natural psychic abilities or my intuitive state. They're second guessing themselves for many reasons. And like as I just said, you know, with children at a very young age, they're very open, they're very creative, depending on the parents, depending on their background. Now, if you have an adult that is presenting to you as a client, you've got to look at their mindset and say if they've got something they've been told for many, many, many years, like, oh, you're stupid, you're thick, you're crazy, or whatever, or, you know, you're not stressed, whatever. You tune into that individual client and then you can work out what's going on with them, so that on a soul level, that you're also working with them to release, to let go of any old self-limiting beliefs and their core and helping their core values. Unless the individual looks at resetting or up leveling, or it's a bit like our computers, where we every so often, or our phones, it says there's a new
Update
program,
the
a new
software.
updating software. And if they don't, they end up with going to people like Jessica, where they end up having these physical ailments because their body's been trying to communicate with them, but they've been ignoring it. Yeah, they've been totally ignoring it. So, you know, with the three of us, we're dealing with different levels of that individual human and trying to help them to understand you are more than what you've just seen. And it's about you managing, not taking control necessarily, but you're managing, taking hold of the reins and going, right, I need to navigate myself through this. How can I do it?
Yeah, and it kind of brings us on to this idea of almost like, what does success look like here? If we're going through stress and we're going through life-changing situations and everything's building up and we've got physical ailments and our mindset isn't great and we're kind of at our threshold, because if you're listening to this video, it's likely that you're going to be at that threshold point where you're like, I need help. Like, someone needs to give me some advice somewhere. Like, I'm just going through as much as I can deal with right now. And we brought together three amazing experts in this industry, looking at different parts of who you are: spirit, body, mind, the whole complete thing, looking at it from different angles. And I kind of want to get an understanding, and obviously we're not going to go into complete details in this call today, but to understand each of these three almost like modalities, even though there's more modalities than just one in each of these. So I guess from this kind of, one question I have for Helen, actually, before we go into all of the kind of different ways that each modality can help here, is there's a word that you use, which is homeostasis. And what does homeostasis mean for those that don't know what it means, and what does that look like in terms of managing stress and returning to a homeostasis while going through a life awakening moment or a life-changing situation like a divorce or a career change?
Well, for me, it's very much about carving out the time to return to yourself, which sounds probably a whole lot easier than it actually is if you're juggling a family and running around from left to right, 9 to 5 jobs, etc. But one of the elements I'm really passionate about is resourcing, because we have so many things at our fingertips, but a lot of the time we're so busy we don't actually have time to connect to those and to return back to what brings us calm, what brings us joy, what makes us happy, what makes us feel satisfied or rested or relaxed, etc. So I'm really big on almost starting there with most people, because you can't work with somebody who's very stressed out or anxious, whatever's, coming through. You can't just go in and work at big stuff if you've not got back to the basics. So it's like, what did you do as a kid that made you happy? What brought joy? What were your passions? Because we forget, right? We get into adult life, we get into work, we get into families, and we kind of lose sight, or can lose sight, of who we are. Sometimes it really is going back to the basics to start with, and to work with somebody so they start to feel supported and built up and nurtured and cared for, and they start doing that for themselves, perhaps where they've not carved out time for themselves, or just haven't even considered that maybe they might benefit from having 10 minutes a day just to breathe and be, right?
And it sounds so basic, but if we haven't got those fundamental things in our life, and the thing is, when we're stressed, those are the first things to go. Like 100%. Taking a shower in the morning, first thing to go, because it seems like a luxury. It's like, no, I must get the kids ready for school, or no, I must just get my job going, or the business that I'm running is blah, blah, blah. The first things that go are the kind of everyday energy hygiene element of it, is literally like maintaining our energy levels. So you come at it from this beautiful perspective of, okay, well, let's start there. Let's put the foundations in place to return to the element of like homeostasis, to return to your neutral. There's got to be this awareness of what's being slipped here and what we actually need to bring back in, right?
Yeah, and I saw someone yesterday actually, and she's pretty stressed at the moment, and she actually said it to me. She said, one of the things I do every day is I shower and I wash my hair. And she's like, every day, my hair doesn't need washing, but I wash my hair every day because it makes me feel better. I mean, it's just so simple, right?
Yeah,
but
it increases your tolerance of being able to deal with the other stressful thing. If you feel like you've got some element of like agency over your own life, if you feel like you've got something that you have control over, when the rest of it feels like it's out of control. I mean, go on.
But this is
go on.
But
go.
No, because this is I feel so passionate about this, because we've come together as we are really the mind, body, and soul. Even though all of us do, we overlaps for all of us. We've trained in certain areas and it overlaps and stuff. And it really is important, because this is where it goes back to this whole thing about mindset, where you're at. When stress happens, because everyday life, if you're a people pleaser, you're putting other people first. Even like when you're in a relationship, what role are you playing in that relationship? That relationship might not be just that romantic relationship. It might be the relationship with your colleagues. It might be the relationship with your children or your parents or whoever. So the thing is, it's like, what you were saying, Helen, you give over your sovereignty. You're not being your authentic self, and that is it. When I sit with clients, I'm like, but what is it that you really want? And they don't know. They put everyone else before themselves because they're so used to doing that. And we give our energy away. I was sitting with a client today and I said, you're giving your energy away because you're thinking that you want this man to love you, but why is he not loving you? How dare you do that? You're losing your own energy. You're not being authentic. So what is it that you really do want? And she said, I just want someone to love me. And I went, but why? What is it that you want? So, with the whole thing with stress, we tend to depend on the roles that we play in our lives. And this is the thing, by coming back to ourselves on an energetic, I'm so passionate about it. We've got to come back to who we are. We've got to start having that relationship with ourselves. We've got to look at what it is that we want, how to live this life. Yes, you come back on the recycle button with past lives. I get that, and I work with that. But in this lifetime, I'm only Anne Bayford in this lifetime. The next lifetime, I'd be called something else, and I might come in a different role. But literally from that day that I died the first time round, I understand the value of living your life to your full potential. And it's so important to keep coming back to yourself. What is it I want today? What is it? And putting yourself first. And a lot of people don't do it from the roles they play, and they need to look at their mindset, where you're at.
Part of that isn't just the mindset, is exactly what you do, Anne, which is looking at the energy hygiene of things, the grounding techniques, the opening and closing of chakras, the listening to your own intuition, your body intelligence, whatever words we want to put to this. So this is why this is almost, there isn't really it's very cyclic. There isn't step one, step two, but we've got Helen looking at the mindset, looking at all the daily techniques that we can do, putting those strong foundations in. We've got Anne, you're bringing in this energy and the grounding and the different techniques that you can do to tune into your inner guidance, your external guidance from spirit and things like this. So we've got this element involved. And Jess, then we've got you, and I really love to understand from your perspective as this, I guess we're more familiar with GPs that do prescribe us medication. Like as soon as you tell them you're stressed, wait, you'll get some, I don't know, depression medication. I don't know what you're going to get. From your perspective as a naturopathic doctor, that's the whole reason that you're here and part of this, because you're looking at it from a holistic point of view. And again, here it's all this kind of somatic and holistic approach to what we're doing as a step to look, what can you give? What's the perspective that you're going to be giving during the stress course?
I mean, I think that one of the greatest disservices we've done with medicine in general is that we've divorced mind, body, and spirit. We took the body. Sometimes some of us will take the mind and carry it along, a few of us, but we've completely left out the spirit part. And I think it's been a great disservice to our health as a people, health as a planet overall. As a naturopathic doctor, you know, I incorporate these like mind, body, spirit. Like that is who you are, right? You're not just a meat suit walking around. Like you have a mind component, you have a body component, but you also have this higher self or spirit component. So for me, when I'm dealing with stress, like I have 4 kind of principles that I follow, or 4 I would call them pillars. Like mindset for sure is number 1. And people are often surprised when they come in to see me that they're like, why are you talking about mindset and meditation? I'm like, no. This is the good stuff. This is the real, this is what's actually gonna fix you. This is the real medicine. But in order to do that, sometimes I have to talk about nutrition first, or sleep first, or exercise and movement, right? I teach you how to take care of your body and kind of trick you in a way so that what you're actually doing is getting back to you. Like Anne and Helen, like we've all said, it's really about like you underneath, like what's the really important stuff. And a lot of times in our modern world, in order to get there, it's easier to go through the body first.
Absolutely. So starting in October, we have a live stress course, and the replays are going to be available, and we're going to put them on our website. So if you are watching this past October, you can still get access to this stress course. This stress course is encompassing all of these different elements that we've spoken about today, from mind, body, soul, spirit perspective. You've listened to how we've got these different mindful techniques and different grounding foundational tools that you can use, looking at the body as a complete whole with a naturopathic doctor being able to look at the reason why stress is happening, the actual effect it's having on your body from a science doctor background, as well as how can we actually treat this without kind of modern medicines, and going back to some of the other things like meditations, like the food that we're eating, like the movement that we're doing. But also at Odyssey, we're so hot on this idea that the times that we experience a lot of the most stress is when something big is happening in our life. And that's what we're kind of reaching out to you. If you're going through a big life change at the moment, or you're still dealing with the remnants of a big life shift and a big life change that you've been going through, and you've stored it in you for 5-10 years, and you're like, oh, I can't get rid of it anymore, whatever, I can't function. This is exactly what this is for. So we're giving you step-by-step tools and actions. It's an 8-week program which you can get access to and have these accessible tools for you. So thank you all for listening to this podcast. You'll find below lots of information about how to join and what each call is going to be about, and you can find additional information on our website at www.odysseytheplatform.com. Thank you all for listening.